Today, we are interviewing
Today on the Mobcast,
episode 11 with Megs Braap.
You're listening to the WannaBes Mobcast.
Super excited because this is probably the second biggest podcast that we've ever recorded with Megan Griffiths. She is the one and the only person that you know as Megs Braap, and she agreed to come on to the podcast with us to talk about her journey as a motorcycle rider, now an instructor and leading all of her own clinics, and also as an influencer. So it's super exciting. She's almost everybody who rides a dirt bike knows who she is. So
I think probably. I mean, she's got a big enough following. She's in front of just about everybody. But
yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's like a million people that follow her across all the different platforms.
combined. And I'm super stoked about that because I think, we started off this podcast with Graham Jarvis, who obviously has an enormous following. It's very outsized. But I think behind him, I think Meg easily has the biggest following of anybody and sort of the most reach. And I think she's also one of the few people that's not doing social media as a hobby. It's my understanding that she's using it to drive her classes that she runs.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously like our business does something similar with social media in that we are trying to provide entertainment, provide content, but also leverage that audience to learn from them and share
be helpful
with them and be helpful. And I think she's trying to do that too. She's not just a racer throwing content up. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm personally interested in her approach to it, and I'm hoping we learn some more about that.
Yeah. So,
Cool.
Without further ado, Megs Braap, everybody.
Hey, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. I'm Kel. You've been talking with John this whole time to get everything set up.
Yep.
But I'm Kel. I'm the other half of our little production effort. So,
Okay. Well, thanks for having me.
Watching you on Instagram for a long time, so I feel like I know you, but I'm sure we're new faces, which is fair. But we're super excited to talk to you. I think that outside of Graham Jarvis, so we launched this podcast. We had like a running joke that if we ever could get Graham Jarvis to come on a podcast, we'd start a podcast. And at some point, John was like, let's just ask him and see what happens. And he said yes, and so we launched a podcast. But we're episode 11, I think, with you. But where I was going with that is I think that you're probably, other than Graham Jarvis, who's got like absurd number of followers on Instagram, I think you're probably the biggest like influencer that we've had on. So we've had a few like other racers that are big names, but your following is bigger than I think almost anybody else we've had on the podcast. So we're pretty stoked about that and a little bit in awe of you, to be totally honest.
Oh.
We're a little starstruck.
That's cool. Well, I appreciate the support. I just figured out how to be able to see you guys. I was just talking into space for the first time. If my eyes were just darting around awkwardly, that's why.
No worries. Very cool.
Well,
Yeah,
Seth,
go.
are we good to go?
Good.
The audio levels are okay? We've managed to mess this up enough times that we figured out like kind of what we need to do in order to get the videos to turn out right. So, and every time we do this, we also wind up adding in a new piece of equipment that we have to learn how to use. So I think we have everything ready to go, and all the audio is tuned and everything. So thank you for bearing with us and for joining us on our podcast. I think we can get started though.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I know the question that I always ask in the podcasts is like, just give an explanation of like kind of what you do, an intro. But and I think I asked Cody Webb this is like, like if you're at a dinner party or something like that, like what do you tell people you do? Because I have to imagine that it's got to get some like funny responses.
Right. So for anyone who's not into dirt biking, I usually just tell people I teach motorcycle clinics because as soon as I try to say like I'm teaching people to better their hard enduro skills, people are just like, what? So I just start with motorcycle clinics and then kind of go from there. I'll go into detail, but yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, it's just like, there's so many,
When we interviewed Max Gersten, I think, what would he say? He's like, I ride dirt bikes. I'm like, All right, that's probably the simplest answer we've ever heard, but yours is pretty close. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, well, you'd be amazed at how many people don't like. It just doesn't register when you try to explain what we do on our dirt bikes. It's just unless they're in a sport, right? And even then, sometimes it's hard to really express the extent of what we do.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, especially if people like, even for example, I work with a guy who's like into enduro mountain biking, and even he's like, so how does hard enduro work on a dirt bike? Like, I would expect him to get it, and he does when I talk it through, but yeah, it's not intuitive. I agree. 100%.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, thanks, Seth. Turn that off. There we go.
So I mean, how did you get into all of this? Like, what's your background, and when did you get into dirt bikes, and then kind of leading up to where you are today? Like, what was your progression through that and learning in the sport?
So I started dirt biking in 2007. So I was 17, and all my life as a kid, I always wanted to have some sort of machine with a motor to just explore the mountains in. And I ended up with a dirt bike simply because the dealership I walked into sold me on a TTR 125. So I was looking at quads, dirt bikes, that sort of thing. I didn't really have anyone in my life that was kind of pushing me towards dirt biking or anything like that. It was pretty random. But I found my passion for it right away. At first it was scary. But I did find a real passion for it and started, growing my skills and kind of, I figured out that I really love breaking down skills. So I started elevating my skills by breaking things down and practicing them. And I mean, this is a very long story short, but I started getting into making video tutorials and just videos in general. I'd video my races, and I'd video all sorts of stuff, and that kind of grew my YouTube channel. So that's kind of how it started. It all started mostly on YouTube, and then I kind of accidentally stumbled into Instagram. I started an account just for fun because everyone had it. I actually dragged my feet for a long time. I thought it was dumb. But I finally got into it super late in the game, and I don't know. People liked what I did. I guess I posted the right video at the right time, and I started to gain traction. And then it was like, oh, okay, I'm making an impact. And my whole social media is what's kind of fueling my clinics, what I'm doing now, which is teaching clinics on the road, state to state. And that's all based around the media following I've built because, they're my customers now. So
that's super cool. I think I'm pretty sure we first found you probably on YouTube, like back in the day a little bit. And I think one of the first videos that I remember that caught my eye was you were talking about like downhill skills in the sand, like on one of the hills that we've actually ridden here in Southern California. And I was like, I'm real sure I've ridden that hill. And this was like a way back, right? But you were talking about like downhill skills and dragging the rear end and whatever. And I remember thinking like, ooh, she rides here where we do. And she's like a big name, like whatever, I'm going to follow this girl. And back in the day. So anyway.
But you're actually,
awesome.
You're in Canada, right?
No. So I'm from Canada.
Okay.
I was in BC all my life, but I've recently moved to Texas.
Oh, okay. And then you travel around for the clinics
Clinics are
sort
in
of
the
like
US,
all over
right?
the place then.
Yeah, all over. I say the country, but sometimes I'm also up in Canada too. I actually just got back from doing clinics in New Brunswick on the east coast of Canada.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, I'm doing it all over.
Yeah.
It's just the Canadian accent that's fooling you, John.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned just a second ago. So you got into the sport without really any like social group. 'Cause so for me, I had a good friend that was into motorcycles, and he was like, always riding, and then I went and got into it because he was into it, and then I dragged a buddy into it, and then Kale and I met.
My brother dragged me into it.
Yeah, he dragged you into it, and then
like that's how it goes typically, right?
Yeah,
like,
and we probably dragged like 10 people into it since then, and it's just like surprising to hear like, you just got the itch one day, you went down to the dealership, you bought a motorcycle, you rode it, and now you are the person that everybody knows as Megs Braap. It's like that's a hell of a story, just going from like completely out of it, not even in the dirt bike world, It's like most people who ride are like really good riders. It's like, oh, my dad was into it, and like, you know, that's a pretty common story you hear. It's like the generational kind of sport.
What did they tell you at the dealership to sell you on a dirt bike? I broke my collarbone on a quad like way back in the day, and like that's not part of anything I ride anymore, really. So.
Right. Yeah, I honestly I don't remember what they did to sell me on the TTR over the quad. It probably came down to the price, or maybe they pushed it a little harder because they got more of a kickback on the TTR that month. I don't know, but I can't remember. But it wasn't just a random itch. Like I'd been wanting a motorcycle or a quad since I was like old enough to even know what they were.
Yep.
So it was only when I was 17 that I had enough money and, you know, could I got a little bit of a loan actually with a cosigner. My mom, it was my first loan. So that was the only time I was able to do it. So
that's awesome. I can 100% relate to having like the childhood like fantasy dream of trying to get into motorcycling, and my dad was not having it. He was like, why would you want to do that? They're dusty and noisy. And I was like, yeah, exactly. He wasn't interested. So yeah, I don't know, I was probably 30 before I started riding. I rode street for a while first, but yeah, like wanting to get into it was always 100% like a childhood dream and something I never had access to. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So I know there's a lot to talk about, and we don't have a ton of time. So I think we really want to just kind of dive into your background in riding. And I know you've done like a little bit of racing. You did the ISDE race, and I think that's probably a good place to start as any, right? Like, what is your background in racing? And then you've moved over more into the clinic side after that.
Yeah. So my specialty, like I started out in cross country and hare scrambles. That was my jam. We have a pretty solid local circuit up in BC. Like it's pretty gnarly. So I started into that and really, really enjoyed it, although it was tough and I struggled and I had a lot of anxiety around racing. But I was super into that. And, you know, every once in a while I'd go down and do a desert race in the US or something like that. But for the most part, it was just cross country and hare scrambles. And then, yeah, the ISDE was my first, which sounds crazy, but it was my first ever real enduro race. So like the classic enduro format and all that. So that was a heck of a way to jump into enduro. But that was probably my craziest experience racing, was going overseas and doing that ISTE. I think that was 2016. So I'd been racing maybe like 4 or 5 years at that point, just cross country and stuff. And then went over and did that.
What caught your eye about the enduro series? Like what was there something, were you trying to get into that, or what was the catalyst for this?
No. So the team manager for the women's Canadian team reached out. They wanted to know if I wanted to go. And it kind of like, I was hesitant. I was very hesitant at first because, A, it's really expensive to go, and B, I had never done an enduro. So it wasn't something I was looking to do, but it kind of, the opportunity arose, and then I ended up doing it, and I'm glad I did. It was a wild experience. Like 6 days of craziness, really.
I can only imagine. That's crazy. Did you take your own bike over there, or like how does that? It seems like logistics would get complex.
Yeah, so either you take your own bike or you rent one out there. I got lucky. I was sponsored by Gas at the time, and they agreed to provide me with a machine over there already.
Okay.
So I didn't have to rent or ship a bike. You know,
Nice.
that's got its issues on its own. If I'd prefer to have my own bike that I'm kind of one with and comfortable with, but I brought my suspension and any little knickknacks that I like to have on my bike, and I was pretty comfortable on it. It worked well.
That's really funny. So like you borrowed a bike and then like set it up. That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of people do it. Like
I didn't
most
realize
people that are going out there bring a whole crate full of tools, parts, anything they need, and then you get there, either you're renting a bike or someone's providing you one, you build it on the spot.
That makes
awesome.
sense, because like the part of the bike that's really customized to you is the suspension, right?
Suspension,
the
yeah,
and
and like
the same.
Like she said, knickknacks. I love that.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Pull your forks and your shock out of your suitcase. And
I need my clever lever.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That's cool. But and I mean now like enduro is your thing, right? So I'm assuming you got hooked on it, or was that still not yet?
Not really. So the ISTE was my first and only enduro race.
Right.
So
okay.
After the ISTE, I had done some more cross countries and hare scrambles, and now and the odd hard enduro, but now I'm more so into teaching. And it's not that I'm not into racing, but right now I've finally quit my day job as an electrician, and I'm doing this full time. So I got to be careful to keep everything together, because I got clinics fully sold out and booked out until the fall. So if I'm messing around in the races just for fun, it could potentially upset my only income now. So yeah. I have to kind of do adult things now and set priorities, but I certainly feel I miss being on the starting line for sure. And I wouldn't mind getting back into it for a season at some point when I can afford to. Because it would build some credibility. A lot of people don't know that I have a pretty solid racing background, and not that most people aren't supportive, but the ones that aren't are the ones who don't understand my background.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I guess I didn't realize until we started digging a little bit that you had a racing background. I mean, I knew about the clinics and some of the stuff you've done in social media, obviously, but yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, basically everything that I knew about you before this was what I knew from social media.
Yeah,
and
Instagram clips, right?
So I just kind of assumed that you started, just posting clips of yourself riding your dirt bike. And I had no idea that you had a racing background, so that's cool to hear.
We've heard you talk about the electrician thing too in some other places, but tell us that story, because that's pretty wild. Like coming off of, I mean, first of all, I don't know if anybody realizes, I mean, that's like a kind of a serious thing to do, and then it's awesome that you're out on your own, like running your business now. That's super cool too.
Yeah, it was a big jump for me. I've been like planning to do this for a long time, and I kind of flourish with a schedule and consistency, like consistent paychecks coming in. I feel I'm a very high stress person, so the idea of running my own business and not knowing when I'm going to have my next income freaks me out. So I was pushed pretty far before I finally got the nerve to do it. Things were happening. I was working in the industrial sector, and you're flying in and out, right? So you're out of town for long periods of time. You have no vehicle, you have no bike. You're up there and you're working, and you stay in a man camp. So it's really hard on a person who wants to be riding and training. And my passion was the thing on the sidelines, and I couldn't build both very well while I was working. So it took a long time of just me kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, I got to make a change. And then, a few things happened with some of the companies I was working for. Just got, I was getting pushed a little bit and treated poorly. And it finally was just like, all right, I've got enough money saved. And I had a whole tour planned out. So I made the jump. I had quit in the past, not quit, but finished jobs and not gone on to new jobs and tried, and then had to fall back on it. But in 2020 was when I quit for good, and I'm still going, thankfully.
Nice. That's rough timing, though. I've heard you mention before that like hitting that into COVID was a challenge.
Oh,
yeah.
It was an accident. I mean, it was. Yeah. I quit in February of 2020, and then they announced all the COVID shutdowns in March.
Yep.
And so my tour got canceled. A lot of it got canceled, and I had quit my job already, and I couldn't get back on that job. So I went and lived in the woods.
Wow.
Because I had the money saved. In case of an incident like this, I guess, but I didn't want that getting pissed away month to month on rent. Yeah. So I just went and lived in the woods and kept as much of it as I could until it was 6 months, I think, before I could get going again on some clinics.
That is such a crazy story. I mean, we followed you through some of that, so we've seen some of your like Instagram posts about that experience. But like, I don't know, that's like so wild. Like, how do you live in the woods? Like, how does that even work?
Yeah, I mean, my family's very like into that sort of thing. You know, my dad and my brothers and my mom. I mean, we've all grown up camping, so it was kind of like taking camping to the next level. Like I lived in
camping for real, right?
Yeah, like a solid canvas tent. It wasn't just like some Canadian Tire tent in the woods. Like it was a sweet setup. It had a wood stove in it. I built a whole outhouse. Like I dug a hole in like a 5-foot hole.
Awesome.
I built a shower. Like it was pretty, like it was legit.
Where do you put something like this? Like literally just like wander off into the woods and like build it? Or is there like
maybe we shouldn't ask that question.
Okay, never mind. Scratch that. Fair enough.
We don't want to give away the coordinates here.
There's lots of space in Canada, right?
Yeah, the backwoods are vast.
That's a crazy story though. Like I don't know. I mean, obviously I've done backpacking and stuff, but I always come home, you know? It's like,
right. Yeah.
That's wild.
So I guess maybe talking about Canada, I've always wondered, because I mean, we're from California. There's a ton of people here. There's diminishing places to ride. You know, I was doing I looked it up. You know, California's got 39 million people, and Canada, the entire country of Canada's got like 36-7 million people.
Right.
Like,
it's a lot more open space.
There's a lot of open space there. I have to imagine like the riding up there is really good. But I've never had the opportunity to ask anybody about like kind of what the community's like up there, and then, you know, just like what it's like to live in that area and ride up there.
It's really good. It is vast. We have lots of riding areas. It's not like some states where you can just ride on public land. So our public land is not, you can't usually take dirt bikes on them unless it's a riding area. So, but we have plenty of riding areas, like hundreds of miles of beautiful single track, specifically in BC. I'm talking BC where I'm from. We have lots of mountains, and the single track is just so excellent. We're very lucky there. It's pretty moderated, like very environmentally conscious, you know, like building bridges over waterways and like stay on the trail kind of thing. And that's what keeps it open and allowed for everyone to ride.
Yeah,
we've got I mean, that's basically how California is. Like a lot of the riding we do is on like OHV trails through like the national forest areas. But yeah, I mean, good single track. It's just I don't think we get any rain at all, so there's that difference. But
so you said that you recently moved to Texas. How are you faring there? I wonder, because a buddy of ours moved to Texas and he was like, "Oh my God, it's the flattest place on the planet. Like all of the terrain features are below the horizon."
Like you got to go down to do a hill climb. But
I'm wondering how you like it there.
Yeah, so it is like that. But Texas is special. It's really gnarly. The riding areas that do exist there are rocky, gnarly, difficult. It's all private land. So these riding areas, like you're allowed to do whatever you want. You can go off the trail. The creeks are trails. Mm-hmm. So and they're small. So the riding areas not being so vast and just like endless means you're going to be there like training, sessioning like sections of creek or hill climbs. And I found as soon as I started spending time out there, my skills were just getting elevated, because instead of just going out and being like, hey, we're going to do 80 miles of single track and it's going to be awesome. It's like, okay, we're going to ride this creek section and practice like banks and hill climbs, you know, like, and it's the dedicated practice comes into play, because you're not tempted to go on this just endless journey through the single track where you just flow and do you.
That's the difference, right? Between like we built a tiny little
when you
track.
Get serious.
Yeah. Learning how to do something as opposed to just getting through it is a whole skill in itself.
You're right. When
the obstacle.
When you want to ride that like 80, 100 miles and you don't really care to learn the obstacles, you're just trying to get through and go, right? And it's when you stop and you just ride the obstacle all day and like try to actually do it right. And yeah, I 100% hear you. That's super interesting. Ricky's had some stuff up from riding in Texas that looked like that. Like I think I know what she's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like everywhere you go, right? It's got their special, unique.
You got to find the good
quirks.
stuff.
Yeah. As long as you know where it is.
So where's like your favorite place to ride now that I mean, obviously you're all over the U.S. doing your clinics and you've had experiences in a few different places. Like what's your like terrain?
So I mean, I'm always gonna love mountain single track because that's what I grew up. Well, not grew up, but that's what I learned in the beginning and learned to love. But honestly, my favorite riding area so far would have to be a tie between Phoenix, the Phoenix area in Arizona there, and then St. George, Utah, just because like it's just the terrain is so special there. Like you got these crazy boulder canyons, and then a few miles away you got wooded single track going up to snow covered mountains. Like I found that area in Phoenix and then Utah to be super cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I we're obviously fairly close to the Phoenix area, but haven't done much riding out there. And definitely something that's on the bucket list that I like to get to. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's sick. It's like they have such a variety. Like you got your classic desert riding, but then you got, like I said, boulder canyons or wooded single track. Like it's just so cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I've seen some your clips and others of like the like creek beds with the boulders in Arizona. Like super gnarly stuff. I'd love to get onto that.
Yeah,
it's like a ton of fun. How did you get so you talked about like doing some of the enduro races and then switching to the clinic, but like somewhere in there you had to have like started to do your own skills training. Like what was that? What did that process look like? And how did you figure out like a riding style you wanted to go like learn how to do, and who taught? Like I don't know if you had mentors that taught you. Like what was the process?
Yeah, so I like there was a period when I first started to right before I got into racing where I had no mentors and I was just basically the biggest noob ever. But I eventually met people out there that were way better than me, and specifically one guy, his name is Hippie. He became my mentor and he started showing me, the possibilities on a bike. Like I'll never forget the first time I saw him go over it was like an 8-inch log and my mind was blown. I was like, that's impossible. And now it's like, just the bar is so much higher, and it's so people like him have helped me realize my potential. And I've also learned a lot from people like him. Like I look up to, I don't know if you guys know him. His name's Quinn Wenzel. But he's one of the top hard enduro guys in the US circuit here. And he's just crazy good. Like his skills are 10 times above mine. And he's also a good teacher. So I learn a lot from him. And it's just kind of, I guess, my need to learn more and more with obstacles and get kind of the gnarlier the better, like pushing my limits has kind of led me to the hard enduro side of things. And I guess that's why it's something I focus more on. I still love flowy single track, and like I love to throw down in like a cross country race or something like that. It's probably actually more my jam. I'm more suited to it being so small. But the hard enduro is what I do most because of the challenge, and I'm practicing it because it's so hard for me as a small rider, and I just want to keep elevating.
You've got mad skills though at like hooking an ankle over the seat, and you're like all the way off the bike. And I just every time I see one of those clips, I'm like, man. And I complain about not being able to reach the ground when I'm off camber. I'm like, grow up. Like,
I want to talk about that because like I feel like that's probably one of the most underappreciated things about your riding. Like you're so good on the bike, but you're not very tall. Like, can you talk about that? Because like I don't know, the first year
you just got to go all the way to the side, John. Like get for real to reach the ground.
When I first started riding, the guy who got into it with me was like, okay, you just got to dedicate a year to this, and you're gonna crash the most in your first year. And I'm 6'2", 190 pounds. Like I can manage the bike okay. And then I look at your riding, and I'm just like, that first year must have been really rough to try to like learn all of the skills and develop, and also not have the advantage of like grasshopper legs like me. So I just wanted to know more about like what that's like.
So my learning curve was very like I said, I was probably the most novice rider you can imagine for a very long time. It was a very gradual. So like I wasn't getting into situations very often where I was, you know, needing to put feet down and couldn't kind of thing. I was riding Forest Service roads and just adventuring in the woods. But once I started getting into it, I guess racing really put it into perspective for me. Like there'd be a gnarly section in the race, at least gnarly for me back then, and I would just be like, oh my god, that's where all the anxiety came from. Because as a small rider, if I got off the track somehow, like down a side hill or got into any situation where strength and technical skills were needed, I was hooped. Like I would get picked up by the sweepers a lot, like in the beginning. And that was my biggest fear. Like I don't want to get in a situation where I can't get out of. So, you know, I'd be shaking like a leaf on the starting line, just thinking, will there be a section that gets me? So that kind of pushed me to be like, okay, well, can I overcome this? I don't want that to be a thing anymore. I want to be confident in the NAR. And again, it's come down to me focusing on balance, so that I don't have to dab a foot as often. Right. And then really understanding techniques and breaking them down and doing things properly so that I'm not relying on brute strength and leverage that I don't have to get through things.
Yeah, I feel like in a way it almost makes you a better rider, right? Like once you get past a certain point, you have to learn.
Be, right?
You have to be a really good rider because you can't put a foot down, or if you do, it's going to really cost you, and
I mean, I remember like early days, like being afraid to go down something because like if I got the bike down in the bottom of like a gully or something, like I wasn't sure I was going to get it back out.
Yeah,
and it's like so embarrassing, right? And I wasn't even racing, but it's just like, how do I even get the bike out of here, you know? And it's like, I don't know, you get to a point where you know you're going to get the bike out for sure, and so it's not as bad. Like, but I don't know. Being like smaller, I feel like that would be, yeah, I guess I could sympathize, but...
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the mindset that like you're just not going to put a foot down, like it's got to help you at some point. And you're riding Gas 300 right now, so right, at least I'm under the impression you are. What are you riding? Maybe I should start with that question.
Get your facts straight, John.
Well, the gas is in pieces because it was having TPI issues. We could do a whole podcast on TPI issues because basically I had to buy another bike like within the same like 2 months because I'm on the road right now doing clinics, so I cannot be fussing with a TPI monster. So I bought a new bike and now it's acting up. The last 2 days I've just been wrenching with no luck actually. So my new bike is a TE 300i and it's also not working. So I'm actually right now on my way. I'm driving 8 hours to Ohio to the dealership where I bought it from to hopefully get it figured out before I have to do clinics in PA next week.
Yikes.
It's not been good. It's not been good. No.
That's super frustrating. I mean, just like I don't have a clinic that I have to show up to, but it's still, I hate when the bike is down. Like I can only imagine that there's like some pressure there.
Well, especially when it's brand new. And, you know, I feel like I bought brand new so I could have a reliable machine for my, and then it failed me. And then I had to buy another one. And now Yeah.
No, I hear you. So I bought a brand new Beta back in 2018. I bought a brand new Beta 390 and like thought it was just the coolest thing. It was the first like new dirt bike I'd ever bought. I was always on used bikes and then just had tons of problems with it. So that's like so disheartening.
Meanwhile, I'm still riding a 2010 KTM 300,
which works great.
And I've resurrected that thing from the grave so many times, like rebuilt it. It still works great. I don't feel like you're pulling away from me too much. So
no, you're keeping up.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something still to be said for those old carbureted bikes.
Do you do most of your own work? Like you mentioned wrenching, but like you're tearing into it yourself. I'm assuming that's what you mean.
Yeah, for the most part. So I have a mechanic that I call if I can't figure something out or if I have questions. He's really good at what he does and he's really knowledgeable. So he helps me through anything that I'm unfamiliar with, which this whole TPI endeavor has been a nightmare because I've been hanging on to my carbureted bike because I know a carburetor well. Right. So he's been helping me through these TPI issues, but honestly, it's new. Like the whole industry is still trying to figure out the TPI issues. So
yeah, that's super frustrating. I was gonna make a joke that you can just ask people on social media, you'll get all kinds of advice.
Oh, golly.
There's a joke.
Don't ask. Yeah, don't ask on social media any bike.
What's the best
related.
tire you want to run?
How do you change what oil, right?
Yeah, what weight oil is the best for my bike?
There's a joke. I can't remember quite how it goes, but something about like if you were like when you need medical advice, like do you go to a doctor or do you post on social media? I don't know. Anyway, it's much better if I could remember how it actually went. But yeah, you get it.
Yeah,
that's funny. But speaking of social media, like I don't know, John. Like I don't want to run out of time, and I'd love to get to.
How are we doing here? We still got a little bit of time.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, okay. So there was one thing I think that on the note of tires and oil, I wanted to know kind of like what your must-have upgrades and like when you bought your brand new bikes.
Bikes plural.
What was the thing that you had to have? Like, what are you setting it up with?
Right. So the biggest thing is suspension. I'm a lot lighter than what these bikes are sprung for out of the factory. So suspension is really important for me. And then my second most important mod is tire setup. So I'm gonna set myself up for hard enduro, which includes a gummy tire on the rear. So you know every company makes one. Right now I'm running a Dunlop on my old bike. It's the AT81EX. And then I'm running a Kenda Gnarly on my new bike that's having all the issues. And, you know, the gummy tire just makes all the difference in the extreme terrain, especially as a light rider. My biggest struggle is probably traction. I struggle with wheel spin. So I do everything I can to help alleviate that problem. Gummy tire, tubeless in the rear, and low air pressure, if any.
Yeah, we're huge fans of tubeless.
I saw on social media or somewhere you posted about how you're doing tubeless and moose in the rear. Are you still doing that, and how's that working out for you?
Yep. So the moose in the rear with the tubeless is a very small cutout portion of like an old worn out moose. Mm-hmm. So it's in there. It's not affecting the feel because it's really small, but it's in there just as a little bit of a buffer because I do like to run 0 PSI in there most of the time.
Yeah.
But it's just there as a buffer.
Well, that prevents you from getting like a totally flat rear tire. Like just the other day, like we had to ride, I don't know, 40 miles or whatever on like a completely flat rear tire. Like the tubeless was holding up just fine, so the beads locked, but like the tire itself is just collapsed. And so I could see like putting a piece of mousse in there to like prevent that failure would be kind of cool.
Yeah, so for me, I don't really deal with that full collapse even on 0 PSI without a mousse, just because I'm light. So I can get away with it, but your average rider, like if you're 180 pounds or something like that, yeah, you wouldn't want to run 0 unless you were in a real like gnarly situation and needed to get out of like a creek bed or something. But yeah, it'll be super squishy. I mean, my 0 is probably like your average rider's 3 PSI.
No, that makes sense. I mean, there's 0 where there's like air in the tire, but it's not registering. I had mine like I slid it open on a rock, so there was like a 2-inch gash in the thing. So it had 0, literally no air in it at all. It was like the slime was flying everywhere. Like
yeah,
total mess. But
it's probably the same thing with the gummy tires too, because you ran a gummy tire. He's riding a 500, and that thing ripped the gummy entire knobs.
I really liked the traction of it though. It was amazing. I'm assuming you don't have very much tire life from those. Like you're willing to take the traction over life.
Yeah, the longevity isn't as good, but they last me pretty well because again, right now I'm mainly teaching clinics. If I was racing full time, like I'd be going through a lot of tires.
I mean, I was putting one on like, I don't know, every couple of weeks or something to do like a gummy. Like I would just destroy them. Like on the 500 just shreds them. But I loved the traction. It was incredible. But I just like, I don't know, I can't justify changing it that often. It's like, I don't know if it's better enough. Yeah, it's crazy.
So I wanted to know more about your clinics. Like obviously you've gotten to the point where you've got this following on social media. It's fueling your clinics. You've developed your riding skills to a point where you're really good and people want to learn from you. But like, if I wanted to take a clinic from you, how would I do that? Like where would I go and how often are you doing them? Where are you doing them? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so I have a website. Well, so I'm partnered with a group called the Traction E-Rag, and my whole schedule and clinic sign up page is on their website. So if you go on there, you'll see a tab for Canadian tours and or Canadian clinics and US clinics, and then once you click into those, you'll see the whole schedule for that country, and it's just you can sign up from there. So I'm offering like level 1 and level 2 clinics. Sometimes you'll find group rides on there too. If you just want to go on like an epic tour in an area you've never been, like I do those every once in a while as well. So all that stuff is on that website.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with Traction E-Rag. They're pretty cool. You mentioned level 1 and level 2. So like, what does that mean? Like what can you expect out of a level 1 versus a level 2 clinic?
So the level 1 clinic is something that's going to be super beneficial for just about anyone that wants to learn. Like, obviously you're not going to get your top pros signing up for my level 1 clinic, but the level 1 clinic, we go way back to the basics and we break bad habits, and then we build throughout the day until, we're doing things like controlled log crossings, like specific techniques, executing small practical controlled wheelies for obstacle crossings, and really getting into the nitty gritty with like tight turns and managing our like slow speed stuff. So that's what level 1's all about. And then when you get into level 2, it's quite a jump up. So I always recommend people take the level 1.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, because if you're not consistent with wheel placement and the ability to wheelie like all the time and choose how high that wheel is, level 2 is going to be a bit tough, because we go into things like suspended logs and double blips and log pivot turns. We spend more time out in the trail than in the drill area as well. Like we'll hit up off cambers and banks, and it really depends on the terrain I have at that specific location. So I got to cater it to that, but we go into more advanced techniques.
Do you require people to take level 1 before they can do level 2, or can people like self-select into level 2 if they think they've got it?
So it's kind of a work in progress. Last year we required it. Well, I can't even say that. And then it, like, a lot of people were just like, no, then like, I'm not going to take either. So this year we've been experimenting with letting people self-assess and decide. And I'm running into a lot of people who really have
a lot of level 1 folks in level 2
clinic, which, I mean, it's kind of a bummer, because I really want everyone's experience to be the best it can possibly be. It really matters to me that everyone's taking as much as they can from the classes. And when someone's that far over their head, not only are they having a bad experience, but it's kind of ruining it for the rest of the group.
People who are actually there, right?
I do have to dumb it down to the lowest common denominator to a point, right? I'm not going to take us up something that I feel that, part of the class is going to get hurt doing. Right. So, there's got to be some sort of way to do it. And I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'm working on it.
What are you seeing as sort of the most underrated skill that like nobody learns, that maybe you see across all the people? Like, what are the basics that people really need to focus on that maybe they don't give enough emphasis on?
Slow speed, throttle control, and clutching. People do not understand the importance of learning how to really manage your speed with the clutch and smooth throttle. It's probably the thing I see everyone struggle with. Even when I get expert level riders in the level 1 class, I'll get them in the full lock figure 8s, so that stuff's going to matter in the really gnarly stuff. One twist of the throttle on an off camber, instead of keeping it consistent all the way across, can result in the back wheel coming down. And people don't understand how important throttle and clutch control is.
I think in any moto sport, but especially in motorcycle riding, there's like a tendency you see a lot of times for people to try to just like gun it through stuff, like hope that their momentum or speed's going to like accidentally carry them wherever they need to go. And then when it gets really technical, like people kind of give up and go too slow and don't carry enough engine speed, and they're just like feet down, like defeatist. I don't know. You see like right, like slam into it, and if you can't do it, then just like give up. And
do you have a trials background?
I don't. I'm really into that sort of stuff, and I do have a trials bike now, which I'm hoping to get more time on. But I don't have a trials background. I wish I did, because I would be a much better rider.
Yeah, it just sounded like the like something a trials rider would say.
Yeah, you're
like,
talking like one
precision control of the bike, being one with the bike is kind of like basically everybody that we've talked to so far, like Luis Forsley and Cody Webb, and even Graham. Right, it was like clutch control and throttle control, body positioning. Like those were the things that were really the kind of key points for them, I think, on that question.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Not that we ask the same questions on all of our podcasts. We definitely.
So when you get people who try for level 2 and like maybe are struggling, I'm assuming like those are the same things that they're struggling with, or is there some like subset of people who like think they're good enough, but I don't know, something else they're missing? Like,
yeah. So the biggest thing that people who aren't ready for level 2 struggle with is their ability to corner, because we go into really slow, tight off camber turns and stuff. And like that's a struggle for everyone. And then where I see it is also with wheel placement. So I'll be like, all right, we're going to be doing double blips. It requires, precision with the front wheel. You got to punch the log at a certain area. If people can't get the wheel off the ground consistently, they cannot try that drill without, fear of hitting the bars with their hips, like. So that becomes a problem, that they're sitting out that drill. And then the suspended log drill, they're sitting out that drill, and we get into log pivots, and they don't have that precision with the clutch to get the front wheel up. And we do go over, we do a whole segment on clutch pops in the clinic, but for someone who's never experienced that and who isn't comfortable having that front wheel up, it's really hard to learn how to pop the clutch and get the front wheel up in a clinic, right?
That makes sense. It takes like lots of hours of consistent practice for sure. It's definitely making me want to take a class though. Like, I actually want to just go ride talking about it.
Yeah, I mean,
just go get on the bike.
We need to take a class from a lot of different people.
No, I mean, I think it's interesting, like the whole class concept, because like we've spent we spent the last year, I mean, we've been riding for a long time, but we spent the last year like really concertedly trying to do like skills training. Like we built a course, we're focusing on wheelie practice and like getting over like bigger logs and doing steps and all kinds of stuff. And I feel like there's this point where like you can only teach yourself so much, kind of like I need somebody to watch me and tell me like, okay, I see like the little things you're doing wrong, and here's like some corrections you can make or something to think about that are going to like get you to that next level. And I've gotten really interested in the like class concept because of that feeling. So I don't know if that like play out with what you're seeing with the people that you teach, like, does that make sense?
Yep. The feedback is really important. And I notice it with my riding. Like I'll get to a point with my riding where I want to learn something and I'm really struggling with it. Like a great example would be like double blips, and then the next level up, jap zaps. For me, that was, I wanted it. And I'm trying for so long. And it's like, it gets to a point where I need someone who's better than me to help me through that. And then so I had a little bit of coaching from guys like Quinn and another friend of mine, Paul, and it was just like ding ding ding, like that was it. Like, needed a little bit of feedback. So I've experienced it, and I try to give it to the students as much as I can too.
That's cool.
That totally makes sense. I feel that. Like, I feel that that's missing. Like, I've never taken a class of sort of self-taught, but like the other thing I've experienced is it's not hard enduro, but like chasing guys on the single track who were way faster than us, like a couple of years ago, were just killing us, and just trying to keep up with them, like, you know, makes you faster, right? And I think like today I can hold my own, but like it was watching somebody go faster and being like, oh, I see what you're doing. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I think a class is in our future. I know we said that, but like we need to just go do it.
We need to talk about social media.
Yeah, let's so let's switch gears a little bit, if that's all right with you. Obviously, so I in the intro, like we were talking about how I think one of the reasons like we're so impressed with you is the social media following that you've managed to build, and like we've been working on it for a couple of years, but obviously have like nowhere near the success that you've had so far. And I'm really curious about a few things. So I don't know if you want to give kind of a little bit of an intro about how you built your following. I know you said that you've like enjoyed kind of starting it, and Instagram was kind of like an afterthought and stuff like that. But obviously you're doing fairly well these days. How did that happen?
Yeah, so like I said in the beginning, it was just chill, just wanted to do it for fun. But it started with a viral video, and then people getting lots of comments and response to it.
Was that on YouTube?
No, the Instagram thing.
Oh, okay.
And so it took one video to kind of snowball things and get people following me. And back then, like I'm talking, I think it may have been like 2015 or something. It was easier to grow, right? You could do cool stuff. People would see it and be like, holy crap, this is sweet. And they'd follow you. Now things are different. Like the algorithm is a pain nowadays. It's really hard.
We have thoughts about the algorithm, but yeah. It can be devastating, right? If your social media is your livelihood and they can just switch things up and make it impossible to grow, that's really discouraging. And I've been feeling that. My Instagram's growing much more slowly than it ever has. But I'm kind of switching gears and focusing more on platforms where I feel like I'm still reaching my followers. They're seeing what I'm posting and it's continuing to grow. Specifically Facebook. It's just been crazy. So Facebook and YouTube, I think YouTube's a really valuable platform. Yep.
Because the people on there are there to like, it's not just kind of like scroll.
Right.
People are there because they're looking up, how to short rider tips or, how to load a bike or whatever it may be. They want to see the video and they're watching and then they're reacting and commenting. And it's like, it's more like thoughtful and a better experience, interacting with these people. So I'm focusing on YouTube and stuff like that.
That totally makes sense. I mean, we have a product that we sell, and like YouTube has been far better for that, even though we're much smaller than on Instagram. Like Instagram doesn't really move product, but like serious YouTube videos like engage people in a discussion that's meaningful, and 100% hear what you're talking about.
That's kind of surprising to hear about Facebook, because I think about Facebook as like
it's your mom's social media at this point.
Mom's social media, right? It's like it's the old.
I mean, we're old enough to like we were around before Facebook, obviously. So like we were on it in the early days. But isn't it like I don't know. Like I got off Facebook because it's so trolly.
Yeah, it was two things, right? Like everybody moved over to Instagram, at least the younger crowd, and then like a lot of the groups within Facebook were very toxic environments for a lot of people to like follow, and like the conversations that people would have on there were very kind of.
There's a really good example. There's a dirt biking group that's local to us that was on Facebook, and when we got involved years back on that group, like there was maybe 1,000 people in it, and you could always find like somebody great to go ride the local trails with or whatever. Like you just throw up, hey, I'm gonna ride Saturday, who's in, and you knew the people who were going to show up and stuff like that. And then within a couple of years, that group was at like 12,000, and everything you posted on there would just get attacked, and it was a miserable place to be, honestly. And so like I don't know, I think John and I both were like, forget this, like we're off Facebook, let's go do something else. And I guess we've never looked back. So it's really interesting to hear that you're having luck there, and it's making me wonder if it's like changed or you've done something different or.
Yeah, so I totally get that whole negative thing. Like sometimes I have to turn off like if a video goes viral on Facebook for me, I have to turn off the notifications because the comments are so thick.
Interesting.
But like my Facebook following, the people who aren't just seeing my videos when they're viral, they're really wonderful people and dedicated, and it's almost quadruple the size of my Instagram following. Like it's much bigger, so I can post something and like I get a lot of interactions, and it's more fun for me. It's definitely toxic though. When anything goes viral, it's like I can't even look at my phone because it's like, it's really hurtful and whatever, right? I'm learning to let things roll off my back. But you know, my community that I've built, not just the randoms from viral stuff, is they're super into what I'm doing, and they're awesome to interact with, and you know.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that where like the algorithm will pick up a post and then you get all these people you've never heard from before, and
Even on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is basically the same thing. It's just a little bit different. But it's always surprising to me how, you know, there is so many people who just want to drop a comment and think it's going to change your whole world, and it's like, well, you're just feeding the algorithm for me. You're just making it so that my post does better. So
like, troll away. Like, yeah.
That's exactly how I think about it, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, like at some point you just stop answering people. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, I think one of the comments we get the most is like, where is this trail? I'm like, not going to tell you, because we get so much shit for like telling people where anything is, because there's someone else who doesn't want people to, I mean, whatever.
Or shift down.
God, it's this whole thing, shift down. No, that was on TikTok. Oh, God, for a while, everybody on TikTok was shift down, shift down. I'm like, I just stopped answering people. I'm like, whatever, that's fine.
So that's one question I had is, I know you're on TikTok, but what do you think of that platform? Have you had any luck there? Or like, what do you think is sort of the next kind of up and coming platform?
TikTok's no longer up and coming.
It's not. Like, TikTok is basically up with everybody else, but like, are you experimenting with any other platforms that might be interesting to look at?
I haven't. Honestly, I have so much going on that I struggle to maintain the platforms I do have. TikTok has value, man. The problem I'm having though is that every video I post gets taken down for community guidelines violations. So I don't know if I got haters reporting me, or like, I truly don't understand, but I can post a video of me railing a berm and it'll get pulled down for dangerous acts or harmful acts to children, like really random stuff, and one more violation and my account's deleted. So I don't really post on there anymore, despite having over 100,000 followers.
So we had that a little bit. I mean, we're not at 100,000, but we had that a little bit for a little while when our account was new, and we appealed every one of those and won most of the appeals, and then they kind of stopped. So yeah, I don't know, but that's like the danger of social media.
Yeah, I don't know. I appeal them and they just keep. I've won a few, but a lot of them, they're just like, nope. Like, there will be videos that don't have any sign of children, and it'll be like abuse to minors or something.
Jeez. It's all these like automated bot decisions. It's really made social media, like, there's value in it, obviously. Like, it's how you can like talk to an audience, but it's so hard to navigate. Like 100%. Like I like, we love and hate it. Like, we end up not using Instagram like for fun, because it's like, so I don't know, like, you just get worn out. Like, you post something and you've got to deal with comments and all that, and you're just like, I'm done, I want off. Like, I'm not even gonna go scroll it, because I've had enough, you know? Super interesting.
From the kind of business side of this thing, obviously you've built your social platform, you're doing your clinics. It's you know, you're obviously working for yourself. This is a business, I guess you could say, if you want to call it that.
100%
I'm like
a business.
Wondering kind of what the next thing is. Like, what are you going to be doing next? Is it just running clinics for a while and try to keep growing your social platforms, or do you have something kind of big coming up that you're working on?
So nothing crazy or big. I mean, I'm planning on growing what I'm doing. This business, the clinics, is just in its early stages. So, you know, it's eventually my plan is to be global. I'm not just going to be touring the US, or just Canada, right? So that's kind of a plan that's in the works a little bit. And then, you know, just basically getting it a little bit more well known, because the clinics that get marketed well are full with big waiting lists, and that's excellent. It's so awesome, but I'm still having problems with marketing in some senses. So that's something I'm working on too. Figuring out how to market my classes in areas that don't have like a lot of support, without having to sit there on my pages being like, sign up for my class on this day, you know, because we all know how that goes. Nobody wants to see that. and it doesn't reach a lot of people anyways, like at least not locally to where I'm trying to market the clinics.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, we've struggled with that too. Like, how do you talk about what you're doing, what your business is? Because, like, yeah, you're right. Nobody's interested. They just want to see another clip of riding or whatever, or some fail, right? Like, so is that? But like, are the clinics that don't fill as fast? Is that like a geography thing, or is that like time of year, like seasonal? What do you think is like the piece that's like a struggle?
There's a little bit of like location and time of year that can come into play, but a lot of it is marketing. So like, let's say I have a clinic in PA and it's like I'm partnered with a big club, like a strong club, sold out with waiting lists immediately, but then I'll do one, someone will reach out, just a private person will reach out and say, hey, I have a property in this place, I want to host a clinic. And a lot of the time those ones are harder to fill because that person doesn't realize how hard it is to market things if you don't have any sort of reach.
Right.
So I can talk about them here and there gently, but I'm not going to sit there and market a clinic local to, like one little town in one little state to my global audience.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
That's not something I want to be doing.
Well, we need to host a clinic then, I think.
Yeah.
Megs Braap,
but we got to actually fill it.
Yeah. I think we could fill it. I feel pretty confident.
How does that work? So like, what is, so if somebody wants to host a clinic with you, like how many people do they have to put into it to make it like a thing that's worthy of you like coming out to?
So we ideally try to fill 3 full days in the area. So it'll be like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If those all fill up, we'll often open a Monday. And the classes fill at 12 because we're, smaller groups mean more one-on-one and more feedback for each individual.
Yep.
And I'm really serious about that. I don't want the groups big, although it would be a lot more money.
But it's hard to like interact, right?
Yeah, I want the product to be good, and I want the people to be leaving with like stoked, you know. So we keep the group small, but we try to do at least 3 days. And we want to fill them, if we can.
So, but those 3 days, like those are 3 like different groups, or the same people do 3 days?
3 different groups. So we'll have like an all women's level 1 on the Friday, a co-ed level 1 on Saturday, and then a level 2 on Sunday, or another level 1 if those are filling up.
And how long is like each session? Is like a whole day, or like what's the format?
Yeah. It's a whole day. So we start at 9 and we usually finish around 4.
Okay. Cool.
So I'm becoming painfully aware of the fact that it's getting dark where you are, and you're fading into the darkness in the back of your truck.
It's making us realize we're eating your.
We've kept you too long.
We're over time. We know it.
But I, while you're sitting in your truck, I wanted to know more about the van life, which for you is the truck life and the trailer life. You're traveling a lot, obviously. Like you're living out of your truck, you're going all over the place. But like why did you decide to go the truck and trailer route rather than with the van?
Yeah, Sprinter van like everyone does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of it had to do with finances, like to get a big enough van for my dogs and I and the 3 motorcycles I drag around would be pretty expensive, and it just wasn't in the cards for me. Things happen really quickly. Like for a long time I was dealing with a lemon vehicle that was costing me a lot of my mental state and a lot of money. So I needed a vehicle quick, and vans were not available. I didn't have time to mess around searching on the used market and like potentially having to build it out. So I got myself a truck. And then the trailer came after the fact. So it was just kind of the way it happened. I'd rather have a van because the trailer life is a pain. Like my mileage is savage, and I'm not very good at pulling trailers, or at least I'm not very good at backing them up, and I'm not comfortable in tight areas, so it's really stressful for me.
You just got to treat it just like the dirt bike and like have somebody point out your opportunities for improvement. Yeah. Right, a spotter.
That's what I've been doing. Like, honestly, I have a friend where I was just at, and he helped me a little bit, and I was at my wit's end now. Like, I'm turning the wheel this way, the acting how it should, and I'm like having a breakdown. I'm like,
I love it. I love it.
The struggle is real.
It's easy to get there. I like watching like fails on YouTube, like the compilations, and so many of them are people trying to back like boat trailers down the ramp, and they're it's hilarious.
So funny.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh, awesome. Well, we've definitely kept you over time, and we appreciate it. I feel like John and I could talk forever. I mean, we love this stuff so much.
We
both
get pretty
social
chatty.
media and the dirt bike. Yeah, like so. So it's great.
No
But
worries.
It's been awesome having you on. We'd love to bring you back sometime and like dive more into. We have this whole list of questions. We didn't even get to half of it because we talk too much. But
maybe someday in the future we'll try to host a clinic for all of our friends here in Southern California,
amazing.
and we can actually learn how to ride properly.
I know we need the help. Yeah, for sure. That would be awesome. So
That's sick.
it's definitely on a thing that we're going to work on.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks a ton. Enjoy your evening.
Having for sure.
Cool.
All right. Bye.
Bye. That was super interesting.
Yeah.
I have this building theory that I think a lot. So we went into this podcast expecting to understand a little bit about how somebody else leverages their social audience to provide value, but also to like grow a product or service. In Meg's case, she's doing her classes. In our case, obviously, we're selling our chin mounts. And I think that there's something kind of unique about that. In the moto space, like a lot of people are putting out content just to be entertaining, and that's awesome. We watch that stuff obviously like anybody else, but there's not a ton of people that are trying to be entertaining and informative, but also like leverage that audience to have a kind of a two-way conversation. And all of that is interesting because I think that the social media platforms have kind of gone the wrong direction in how they treat creators. So there's this whole long conversation around it, but the gist of it is that as a creator, it used to be that you could go on social media and build a following, and you could sort of, it was a two-way street. You provided content and your following provided eyeballs, and it was like your way of marketing or advertising or whatever, right? Through content. It's like sort of the truest form of content marketing that has ever existed to date. And unfortunately, the algorithms are kind of shitting on that, honestly. Like it no longer matters how much of a following you built or the fact that you've kind of earned an audience through reputation and through content. The algorithms don't care anymore. They care about sort of this randomness factor that nobody can control. And it means that it's really difficult to have any purpose behind having an audience, because we have 20,000 Instagram subscribers, for example, and we're as likely to have a post get in front of 5,000 people or whatever as some kid with 200 followers who put up their first post today and it just happened to get caught by the algorithm, as somebody like Graham Jarvis who's got millions of followers and also just happens to get caught by the algorithm, or not, as the case may be. And obviously mostly not. Like, not everybody can be viral every day.
Yeah, it's really frustrating.
And it is frustrating. And what was really interesting to me is like we struggle with that, and I always felt like it was an internal struggle, but the more we kind of talk to other influencers about that problem, the more we hear that reflected back.
Yeah.
And I think Meg kind of confirmed that, like, you know, she's got problems with the auto censorship's not the right word, like the auto content moderation, right, is making mistakes. We've seen that. And she's got this kind of conundrum of like, you build this audience over a few years, and now the algorithm is saying like, we don't really care that you have an audience. We're just going to pick random stuff, and it might be the kid next door, or it might be you with your audience that you've earned, and it's like all the same. And on the one hand, it's like this great leveler, and it's great for the platforms maybe, but I wonder what it does to creators. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have all my thoughts on that. It's really sad to see, and I hope that, you know, things change and it makes it easier for all of us. And
maybe
you know,
we're going back to Facebook like Meg.
Yeah,
right? We haven't taken that platform seriously in a long time, and
that was one of the most surprising elements of this whole podcast to me, was to hear that she's actually going back to a platform that I feel like most people have just forgotten about.
It's interesting because every time we do one of these podcasts, I feel like we have some like really interesting takeaway. You know, you learn something about photography or suspension or running a race or whatever, and everybody has like a nugget that they drop. And obviously Meg, like her focus is on these classes and stuff, but I feel like my takeaway as like a business owner and like an influencer was go give Facebook a second shot. Maybe.
I was really impressed with her whole outlook on the sport. Like, as a woman coming into the sport, not really having any support or social network around that,
starting cold, like
and just
that.
starting, she said she's always wanted to do this ever since she was a little kid, and she went and bought a dirt bike. She learned how to ride a dirt bike. She got into the community. She started racing. She got really good, and now she's teaching people how to do it, and that's like all on her own initiative. Like that's a truly inspiring story for anybody, no matter who you are. Like, you've done, like, most people are too scared to try anything new that they're not like automatically good at. Like, you just have to be blessed with a skill and be like a natural from day one for most people to like try something new.
I think most dirt bikers that we know got dragged into the sport almost kicking and screaming by somebody. Your dad rode, your dad was a racer. In my case, my brother rode and literally dragged me in kicking and screaming. Like, I was like, no, I'm not going to go.
Or you came over from like mountain biking.
Not going to go dirt biking with you. Like, I'm good. And then finally I was like, fine, I'll go. Just to shut him up, honestly. And like immediately loved it. Or mountain bike. Right, there's like some like
something
gateway,
got you into it.
Right.
Like, you knew somebody.
Something hooked you.
The fact that you just
Megs just showed up in a motorcycle store, right? Which is such a cool story.
I mean, I get like the itch from an early age. Like, I remember going into a motorcycle shop when I was probably like 6 years old, and like seeing in there, and oh my god, I wanted it so bad. But it was $1,000, and like, it was never gonna be able to afford that.
I didn't even think my parents had that kind of money.
Yeah,
they
I
probably
know.
did, but.
It was so far beyond the realm of possibility, and like now, like. Yeah,
just to see somebody just like go and take that initiative. But I think that tells you a lot about her character. And with that backstory, it's not at all surprising that she's now reached the point where she can teach classes and she's running a business and doing this full time, because that personality drives you through all sorts of let's go try big things.
Well, it shows through all the rest of the things, right? Like growing a social media channel, being consistent, posting, getting good content. Like, it's not really, I guess, any surprise that she's been able to be as successful as she is, because she's an incredibly driven person and has an incredible work ethic, and obviously she probably could ride circles around both of us. Absolutely. Which is awesome. I love it.
That's why we're gonna go take her class.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe that. Take her class. But we didn't ask her where we wanted to point people, but we'll put.
I'm sure we can find it.
We'll put links in the description to ERAG.
Traction ERAG.
Traction ERAG, yeah.
That and she did say that's where she's got her that's where her courses are. Like, you can sign up for them. So links will all be down there. Her social platforms and all that stuff. We're gonna put all that down there for you to find, and we highly encourage you to check that out. If for some ungodly reason you don't know who Meg is, then you're in for a treat. If you do know,
you just don't exist on social media.
Yeah, you're dead to us. Why are you watching us and not her? God, what's wrong with you? What do you got there, John?
I have a
What
helmet.
are you intruding with?
I am interjecting into this podcast.
I have a helmet too.
You have a helmet too?
I have a helmet too. See?
My mount's cooler though.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, get that relic out of here.
Museum of Chin Mounts.
It is. So the thing that supports our channel and allows us to grow and supports our business is these cool little chin mounts. Basically, we make a whole line of these. They're for all of the different helmets. We have like 70 in our store right now.
This might be like number 70.
Is it?
We're right there somewhere.
Yeah, so we have a ton. The number is ever growing as we design them. We get them listed up on our website. But basically, they're custom fit to each individual helmet. They give you cool things like the distance from the helmet, so you get tip back angle. They're made out of a rubberized filament, so they're very crash resistant or impact resistant.
They're crash proof.
We've run these things over with trucks. We've smashed them with sledgehammers. You can't break them.
Your camera and your helmet are broken long before the mount breaks.
And your neck and everything else.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, you're in the ER.
Yeah.
So check these out.
We don't wish you.
If you want to support our podcast, also check out our dope shirts.
Actually, so these are both old versions, but the graphic is the same. Like, the artwork is fantastic. If anybody knows who Tristan is, he's local here to Southern California, a fantastic artist. Artwork by him that we commissioned. But we've got those up on our shop, which you can also find links to in the description.
Yep.
And then, of course, you must like and subscribe, because this is podcast episode 11, which tells you that, like, we're on to something here. So we've done 10 of these before this one. We're going to do another 10 over the next few months. These drop monthly, roughly. Like, subscribe, hit the little bell thing, whatever. I know that that's like super trite to say, But these podcasts are pretty cool, and there's more of them coming. And in fact, we've got people lined up that you're going to want to hear about. So
yeah,
join
a bunch
us
of cool
in the future for
guests
those.
coming down the pipe, and
Even if you like ignore all the other videos that we periodically post about, you know, cool stuff like how to fix your dirt bike, that's fine. But watch these podcasts because these are cool.
I think that's all we have to say.
I think that's it. Yeah. See you later. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye. Up there. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.